Hey everyone, what's up? How's it going? I hope you're all doing great, as I always say. In this video, I got some stuff that's sure to blow your socks off. That's the thing that came to mind. I have a possible crawler encounter in Australia and one in the US. I have a hair-raising and close encounter from the Ozarks. I have an encounter with who knows what that leads to missing time in Nova Scotia, Canada. A possible fake town that doesn't appear in any map in Utah, and some pretty dark happenings from Vietnam. Don't forget to pull up a stump, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. I'm a dude from Nova Scotia. It's a comfy place. There's lots of beautiful places to visit. But anyways, I grew up in a place called Lake Echo, in a trailer park, and when I was young I used to do kid stuff, never thought much of the place, but I was told to never ever go into the woods. And even now I understand, because they were the kind of woods that were very dense, and if you just look into them, everything around you seems to melt away and you can't hear anything. These woods are seriously off. Something came out of those woods and stared through my window late one night. That window was many feet off the ground, and we left after this hurricane hit, so nothing much happened outside of that. But fast forward many years. Now I'm 19 going on 20. I meet this guy and I do a bunch of work for him over the years. We become chill. He's like the dad I never had type. I'm working at his house in Lake Echo. I was doing clerical stuff, cleaning, sorting stuff out, doing his emails for him for his business. His cat loves me and curls up around my feet all the time. So work continues. I start to feel slightly tired, so I get some coffee. The cat comes in and hops up on the table and starts looking out the window. This cat is seriously spooked and starts getting real low, its ears pinned back, and starts making those low angry noises. I look outside and I immediately feel very uncomfortable. Now from here on out, it's a bit of a blur. A lot of things happened. There was no wind, no birds, nothing. For some reason, I vomit into the sink. No warning, no reason. The cat freaks out and runs away. Everything is spinning. I am not sure what's going on. The next thing I know, I wake up, neck deep in the lake behind his house. My nose is bleeding. My gums are bleeding. I'm almost underwater. I start to panic and I backpedal onto dry land. But the whole time I feel like that there's something trying to drag me in, like something is pulling me. I start crying. This event was near the end of the summer, so after I finished that year, I didn't go back. Seriously, screw that entire place. I don't know what happened to me, or how I ended up in the lake. I'm not even that good of a swimmer, or my nose bleeding. Better yet, I wonder what would have happened if I never came to. So I live out on the Ozarks, and it definitely can be a very spooky place. This happened some time ago. When I was a teenager, I was living out in a more rural part than I live in now. This one night, I'm taking out the trash with my family's old four-wheeler. The machine is beat up and has a dead battery, but it's still super fun to drive. I ride down to the drop-off point and I deposit the trash. I decided that I wanted to screw around on the four-wheeler for a bit. I'm just wearing my pajama bottoms. I don't even have any shoes on, and I don't have my phone, but I figured I'd be fine. I take one of the old dirt roads that run along our property. After going crazy and riding for a while, I reach a dead end. I am very deep into the forest now, near an old abandoned homestead. The tree canopy It is so thick that I can no longer see the stars. I turn around and start heading back. Suddenly, the four-wheeler sputters and dies. The light fades away, and I am quickly swallowed up by darkness. I think, oh crap, I forgot to fill the gas tank before I left. I start fumbling for the gas reserve valve. The wilderness around me is dead quiet. My hands finally find the valve. Then I hear it, a snap. A distinct destruction of tree limbs fills my ears. I stop and listen. I hear crunches and more snaps. It sounds like a big animal, hopefully a deer. I anxiously scan the tree line. More snaps. I think maybe it's a bear then, but I can't see anything because my eyes aren't adjusted. I start thinking about all the stories that I've heard from my parents and family members about these very woods, and I start to freak out just a bit. I press the four-wheeler's electric start. Nothing happens, and I remembered, right, the dead battery. I reach for the pull start and give it a yank. The engine sputters and dies again. The crunching noises are getting louder. It sounds like whatever it is on 2 feet. A little more fear sets in as I realize that whatever this is heading toward me. I start ripping on the starter for all it's worth. The sound of rocks now tumbling on the road sends shockwaves down my spine. It's right behind me. The four-wheeler's engine roars to life, and just at the split second it takes for me to mash the accelerator, I look behind me and I see a huge, shadowy figure, its arm reaching out toward me. It was that close. I drive as fast as possible back to my parents' house. I don't look back once. I am quite unsure of what I saw, and I am curious if anyone can help me identify what I've seen. I'm sitting in my bath right now, trying to calm myself down. I live in rural Victoria, and I have a neighbor who is Indigenous. I'll explain why I mention this later. The day that this happened, I was helping her de-weed her backyard because I had nothing better to do during lockdowns. I'm going to try and describe this as exact and directly as I can. While working, I began to smell something exactly like copper, like when you get a bloody nose and you can taste it in your mouth. It was overwhelming. In my neighbor's backyard, there is a patch of exposed dirt, and this was in around midday. I started to look around for the smell. Directly in front of me was a figure that was about as tall as a human, but it was completely void of tone and color. It was pretty indescribable. It's similar to when seeing something that is in your peripheral vision. It's vague around the edges. I looked at it, center frame. I looked where its face and features would have been. I saw nothing but 2 slits and maybe 2 dots for eyes. I looked at it only briefly, but I am sure it had a human-like build. At first I wasn't scared. In the instant I was more so confused. Then I immediately felt compelled to look down and close my eyes. When I did this against my own will, I realized how scared I was. I'll admit, if I wasn't holding back tears, whatever fear had taken over me, it really shook me to my core. I was still, and I could hear this thing walk past me and further into the shrub behind me. I couldn't look at it even if I wanted to. It took me some time to catch myself, and then I immediately left. I explained to my neighbor on the way out that I would come back in a bit to help her. She could see that I had cried because my eyes were still red. I collected myself, came back, and kept working. After this, I was not disturbed otherwise. I mentioned this to her, and she said that she was going to ask around within people she knew and see if she can find some kind of explanation for what I saw. Maybe it has a name, but I haven't heard back from her yet. Me and my wife had an encounter with what I think you guys call a crawler. This one time, my wife asked me to go camping. I hated the idea. I hate camping. She's excited though, and I want to make her happy. So I decide, okay, why not? Let's go. We drive to a secluded bit of land near her grandparents' own. We spend hours setting up the tent and the campsite and all the amenities we're going to be using. We get ready. We go hiking. Now, during the hike, and this entire time up to this point, nothing out of the ordinary happens. It was literally just like a regular camping trip. But yeah, we're hiking along, and then it starts raining a little bit. We get a little wet. We decide to double back because we don't want to get too soaked. We get back just as it gets dark, and I make a fire. And now my wife is getting a little low energy. We eat and we talk for a while. Then we go to sleep on this inflatable mattress, a double sleeping bag. She starts shivering at some point. I ask if she's okay. She keeps shivering though. I worry about her. She finally says that she doesn't feel good. She said that she didn't tell me because she didn't want to ruin the trip. That was her idea in the first place. I feel her face. She's super hot. In my head, I'm like, oh man, we get to go home. And I tell her that the trip won't be any fun if you're just sick the entire time. I think you have a fever. She agrees. I say that we should go home, maybe go to the doctor in the morning. I get up and I help her to the car. I start it and I turn on the heat for her. I start packing up some of our stuff. I'm in the tent, deflating the mattress. The horn beeps. I run out and over to the car. She says that there was somebody around our camp. She said they were crawling on all fours. I can tell that she's upset, but I don't really believe her. But she maintains that as soon as she saw someone move, she beeped the horn. I just tell her to relax, and I start to gather everything outside the tent. I just step back in to roll up the mattress, and I hear her yell my name. It sounded like it came from in the woods. I think, why the hell is she outside the car? I hear, help, my leg is bleeding, and she said my name. I rush out. I glance at the car. She is asleep in the passenger seat. I'm standing there, analyzing what's going on, trying to hold back the wave of fear that's going over me. I hear someone yell again, help me. It still sounded like her, but just a little bit off, like too deep. I take down the tent and I just roll it up and shove it into the car. I think I ended up leaving a couple things, like some fire starter and a chair, but I just got the hell out of there, and I was driving a little fast. I wake my wife up and have her put on her seatbelt. A while after we got home, I asked her to tell me what she saw. She said it looked like a naked person, that they were super pale, almost translucent white. They were crawling in behind some trees. Then she saw it stand up against a tree. This is when she beeped the horn, and this thing dropped down and ran away on all fours. So yeah, I've come to know this thing could be a crawler. In 2018, I think I found one of those fake towns that you hear about, like Truman Show fake. So, it was in the summer, and I was on a cross-country road trip, hitting up some national parks. I was in central and southern Utah. It was getting late, around 10 p.m. I had been driving since around 6. It's dark as hell. There's no moon. You can only see what's lit up by my headlights. I decide to find some place to rest for the night at the next exit. I see a town off in the distance. I turn off on the only pull-off that I've seen for over an hour that heads toward the town. The pull-off is unmarked and unlit. It doesn't seem to be on my car GPS, and I don't have any cell service. The town is directly ahead though, so I keep going. The road turns to a dirt road and is about 5 miles until it turns to pavement again. This would be right at where the town and businesses begin. I immediately notice that the town strikes me as weird. There's nobody on the streets, no cars on the streets, or in the businesses' parking lots. There's jazz music being pumped through the streets for some reason. Not loudly, but loud enough to hear. This town only looked to be about 7 blocks wide from some miles out, has every major fast food chain I've heard of, and 7 hotels on the main street, but still no cell service, and still not on a car GPS. I go to get food. The KFC was fully illuminated and unlocked, but nobody was there. Same thing with Jack in the Box. McDonald's, though, has a cashier and a cook when I go there. Both look super annoyed. They take my order, and they give me distinctly non-McDonald's nuggets and fries, and I leave. I start going to get a bed for the night, a Hampton Inn, an empty parking lot. The third annoyed-looking person informs me that they're all booked up. I go check a La Quinta. The person at the counter, I am now convinced is the same cook from McDonald's, is also telling me that they're all booked up, even though the parking lot is empty. I checked the Holiday Inn Express, an empty parking lot. There was a person that was clearly the cashier at the McDonald's is behind me at the check-in counter. Surprisingly, they have rooms. I ask him if he's the guy from McDonald's, and he says, no. And I think, well, that's good enough for me, I'm tired. I get to the room. The Wi-Fi exists, but nothing loads. But I take a shower, and I crash. The next day I wake up, and there's no breakfast in the lobby, and there's no other guests. Anywheres. The McDonald's guy is still there for checkout. I ask him how to get out of the town. He says, the same road you came in on. I head to McDonald's to get something to eat. The town is still playing that smooth jazz. There's still nobody on the street. I order at the drive-thru. The drive-thru lady is definitely the lady from the Hampton Inn. I ordered a McGriddle and a black coffee, and she hands me a microwave English muffin sandwich and what I assume to be some kind of instant coffee. This place is too weird for me to stay and argue. I followed the directions that were given to me previously and take the only road in and out of town. Maybe 3 miles onto the 5-mile dirt road, I notice a big metal wire fence on both sides of the road in the desert. It meets on the road with this big motorized gate that's opened. As soon as I pass through, the gate starts closing. I get back onto the road, and I finally get onto 62. There's no way this can be right. I could have sworn I was on 89 when I decided to pull off, and there's mountains in between. I finally get cell service. Nothing matches the description of the town. None of the charges ever show up on my card. I've told some people, and someone suggested that it was Richfield, but I know I was south of there, and they probably would have actually charged me for stuff. I don't know. The whole trip, the whole situation, just kinda gives me the heebie-jeebies. 1975. The South Vietnamese president and many generals took all their money and fled to France. All of the troops knew that they had been deceived by politicians and gave up fighting and fled back to their homes. My father was in the jungles of Nha Trang at that moment and knew that the war was lost. He assembled his men one last time to warn them of what was to come. Burn all your uniforms, insignias, pictures, anything you have that may identify you as South Vietnamese soldiers. Blend in with the fleeing refugees. Not all of his men came from Saigon, so they split up to flee separately. Only one kid, who considered my father as his sufu, or master, came along with him to head to Saigon. During the third night of their escape, they came upon a small, friendly South Vietnamese JROTC army camp in the dead of the night in the middle of the jungle. It was the Junior Officer Reserve Training Corps with their trademarked red berets. There was a few watchers that were awake, and everyone else was lying on the ground around the campfire, apparently sleeping. The kid officer there barely looked 17. He asked for their ammo, weapons, food, anything they can use to continue the fight. The kid also asked my father to remain and help them fight in their eternal struggle. Despite my father's best efforts to dissuade them from throwing their lives away, they said to him, "It is already too late." The seriousness of those words are obviously lost in translation. The kid rebuffed my father and called him a coward and curses him to be totally crushed. No bones left for your children to weep over. May spirits of your dead comrades and people curse you and no longer offer you their protecting in the dark. My father gave up, gave him everything he had, and went to sleep, since they had been doing nothing but running away. As an experienced jungle fighter, my father never did fully sleep and always had his ears open, lest you want the Viet Cong to slit your throat. He swore that he could hear the kids wake up and stir around normally around their camp with pots and pans, and hear them talk in distinct southern accents. The next morning, he and his buddy woke up and found themselves surrounded by corpses, including the body of the kid that he had talked to last night. But they were all heavily decomposed. It seems that they had died a long time ago, rotting corpses and all. The smell was immediately noticeable. Thinking that it was a Viet Cong night attack, he had no choice but to move onward home. Feeling that the North Vietnamese are getting too close, they doubled their pace and traveled at night as light as possible. They tried the main road and found that it was congested with civilians and made a killing field for North Vietnamese artillery, not to mention the looting and stealing of gold jewelry and other crap by soldiers deserting the front lines. Thus, he decides to stay in the jungle roads. He recalled that exactly around 3 a.m. they happened upon a blind bend in a road in the jungle and crossed it. At that moment, a bus came roaring and stampeding toward them in total darkness, like a large shadowy monster, and my father quickly dove out of the way. His buddy was not so lucky and was ran over. He died instantly as the bus chewed up his body under the wheel. While weeping for his friend, my father dragged his mangled body piece by piece to the side of the road. He said, at that moment, the insects silenced. The rustling of the leaves failed. The moon stopped dead in the sky. Then he heard laughter of children, men, and women, echoing, rebounding, and resonating from the jungle, mocking him. He fired at the sound with his 1911, emptying it, screaming, Have I not fought enough for you people? Take me, and not him. He's too young. Take me instead. Take me. The laughters replied with complete silence. He dug a shallow grave and made a crude tombstone to mark a landmark so that one day he may come back and properly lay his friend to rest. In the end, only my father made it back alive. 12 of his comrades died. To this day, he could never find his friend's final resting place. My father has many more stories, but this is what I recall most accurately for now. The story is from my father, who fought in the Vietnam War as a squad leader. I'm not sure how to translate his rank, but he had 12 soldiers under him as an officer who graduated from an academy. By that time, half his soldiers are barely men. They were just teenagers, drafted into the war as replacement for those who've fallen. So, what'd you think of those? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. Do you have one of your own? I have an email in the description below that you can send them to if you want to. I also have a PayPal and a Patreon down there as well if you want to support the channel that way. No pressure though. There's also super thanks too. And something funny that I thought of, well, I thought it was funny anyways. The fake town one, the Truman Show kind of town. The feeling that it gave me, or that it reminded me of, was when like you go to a different town or a different village and they have a store that's also in the same chain as like your grocery store, but you go there and everything is like totally different from how it is at your store. So you're like, there's no way this is real. How do these people live like this? You know, that's just the feeling I got from it. I don't know why. But yeah, definitely thank you for pulling up a stump. Don't forget to like the video and all that good stuff. And I think I'll put a couple other videos that you might enjoy if you haven't seen them already. So, thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching. Remember to drink water, wash your hands, and stay moisturized, I guess. That's the word that comes to my head again. So, we're going with that. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.